the NHRA, the world's largest motorsport sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship drag racing from the NHRA. From California to New Jersey, Canada to Texas, the NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing Trail makes 19 stops a year, with the world's finest racers questing for their share of the $18 million total purse. The most recent event was at Maple Grove Raceway near Reading, Pennsylvania, the Keystone Nationals, and what a race! Never before has the record book taken such a beating as it did in Top Fuel Eliminator. Set and reset 4 times in a single weekend, with the eventual Keystone champion Darrell Gwynn setting the new standard at 4.95 seconds. He defeated Joe Amato in the final round with another 4.95 second run. In Funny Car, John Force won his first national event title for the season, defeating the crowd favorite and Winston points leader Bruce Larson in the final round. Force had a big advantage off the starting line and used that to hold off the quicker elapsed time of Larson. Finally, for 3 races in Pro Stock Eliminator, Bob Glidden had been trying to achieve an unheard-of milestone, winning his 75th national event title. The Pennsylvania track proved to be the setting for history as Glidden defeated Bruce Allen to take his 75th NHRA event victory. It is fitting that the newest super race facility to be built in the United States is just 3 hours away from the site of the very first NHRA national event, held in 1955 at Great Bend, Kansas. To the weekend, this is the celebration of the 35th anniversary of that event, and a bit of comparison between it and the inaugural AC Delco Heartland Nationals is in order. The Great Bend race was run on an airport runway as city officials and the Great Bend Chamber of Commerce worked with NHRA to stage the race. The purpose of that early day event was to allow racers from all across the country to come to a neutral site to determine which car and driver was really the best. There were 220 contestants and only a few thousand spectators on that airport runway to watch times top out at 150 miles an hour. Today, the 19-race NHRA Winston Series attracts thousands of competitors to spectacular theaters of speed, the latest of which is the all-new Heartland Park, Topeka. Some 700 acres in total size with the ultimate in high-tech racecourse construction, attracting over 500 entries and tens of thousands of spectators enjoying an event that combines the atmosphere of competition, car show, manufacturers' exhibits, and a festival of excitement. The inaugural AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and welcome to the all-new Heartland Park, Topeka. One thing certain about this race day, the winds are definitely blowing in off the plains of Kansas. One of the questions always raised about any new racing facility is just how good is the racetrack itself going to be? That question was answered in the first day of qualifying. And for the details, here's my good friend, Steve Evans.
Well, David, the huge crowd in Shirley Muldowney's pits tells you that the paint car continues to be a major story in the sport of drag racing. 2 weeks ago, the last event, the Keystone Nationals in Pennsylvania, Shirley Muldowney ran her first ever 4-second elapsed time. She set the national record, another first for her, even though it didn't last all that long. Then she comes to Heartland Park, Topeka. She is one half of the first pair of top fuel dragsters to ever go down this racetrack. What'd she do? 4.96. No other driver throughout qualifying or first round this morning has been able to match that elapsed time. Shirley Muldowney, the only driver with a 4-second elapsed time here. Shirley, the big question is, can you get that consistency to win one of these things again?
I think we can, but there's a headwind out here. I think that'll hurt the mile an hour and not the ET, but hopefully the sun won't make the racetrack so warm that we can't put the power down on the ground.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you, Steve.
Is this some kind of a lady, guys, or what, huh? All right. They're behind you.
Thank you.
David?
Shirley there signing autographs. She'll be coming up just a little bit later here in round number 2 of Top Fuel Racing as our first pair of cars come to life. This is the man leading the points chase, Gary Ormsby, debuting a new car here at Heartland Park, Topeka. This is his 4th ride this season. His competition, the man closest to him in the points chase, Joe Amato at the wheel of the TRW Special.
And David, you can see the pressure on these men's faces before they crawled into this car. This is not just another side-by-side race during the season. This is one potentially you could look back and say, that's where I won it or that's where I lost it.
Coming into this race, Ormsby only holds a 332-point lead over Amato. And right behind Amato is Dick LaHaye, and then right behind LaHaye, the man that won the last 2 races in a row, Darrell Gwynn.
And we should explain that you get 200 points for every round of racing you win. And there is Tim Richards. No one has to tell him how the math works in this Winston Championship Series. You don't get anything if you lose, and you don't win a bonus if you win the event. It's per round of racing throughout the season, 200 points.
Lane choice at this event, as it is at all NHRA Championship drag races, is determined by the quicker elapsed time either in qualifying or the previous round. In this case, Ormsby ran a 5:15 in the first round when he had a bye run. That gave him the lane choice. Ormsby had a 5:06 in qualifying, which looked very strong at that point. But Joe Amato had a 5:04 even quicker in qualifying, but he fell off in round number 1 to a 5:24.
As the reigning Top Fuel champion, Joe Amato may be a little more accustomed to this kind of pressure. He had that tremendous battle in '87 with Dick LaHaye. Gary Ormsby, as you said, has lane choice in the far lane. So far, that has not been a factor. The brand new car of Ormsby.
The Castrol GTX Special rolling into the beams, and Amato with a slight wheel stand, but he's out first. And at the finish line, by just a matter of a few feet, Joe Amato advances into the semifinals of 5:11 at 273 miles an hour. Ormsby was very close at a 5:15. As we go back and look again, you can see both cars dead even at the starting line. Then in the first 60 feet, Amato pulls ahead. As they headed down track, that was the margin that Amato maintained until they neared the finish line 1,320 feet away, and by just a few feet, he defeated Gary Ormsby. Steve?
Well, Dave, as you might imagine, we have got one pumped up Joe Amato down here. He can't even get his helmet off.
We're talking pressure, buddy. This is pressure.
You know, when you beat the points leader, it's really like making double points because you put him out.
Yeah, I know, Steve. We've had to run him every race for the last 3 races, and thank God we've been able to beat him. We're struggling with this race. You know, we came out here and we did some testing and we got behind a little bit. And Tim Richards and my guys, you know, that was a very important race.
Well, you're not struggling now, a 5:11 in this headwind.
Well, that's pretty good, Steve. We're just happy to get the win light, and, you know, the World Championship is what we're looking for.
And, Dave, if I do my bookwork right, Joe Amato could take the points lead if he wins this race.
Steve, your calculator is performing up to par, and Joe Amato hopes his race car will too. It's a tough job to win one of these races. Just ask the man whose crew is preparing their race car. That's Kenny Bernstein. He will be racing Mark Oswald in round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator coming up just a little bit later. Let's go back to Steve with Gary Ormsby.
Not much I can say, a bitter pill for you here.
Yeah, sure is, Steve. We'll probably go out of here for the first time this year without the lead, so really put some pressure on us, you know.
The new car a little slow to come around?
Well, it really hasn't come around like we thought it would, but maybe we can get it together at Dallas and get back in this thing.
Now, you've moved the motor. Maybe you can show us. You've moved the motor way, way back in this new car. Much closer to the rear axle for more traction, I guess, huh?
Well, you can see that it's that's as far back as you can get them right here. It's about, we moved it back 4 inches from the location, and as far as the other car we had, ran pretty well. We really intended on running this car in 1990, where the rule changes were going to have this. And I think with a little work, we'll get it together, though.
Good luck in Dallas.
Thank you.
Steve, this new race car of Gary Ormsby brings up an interesting point. We'll touch on that in just a few moments. The 1989 NHRA AC Delco Heartland Nationals is being brought to you by AC Delco. Automotive parts that don't just fit, they match. And by Firestone. Watch us. We're on the move. And by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. More Top Fuel Racing from the Heartland Nationals in just a moment.
as Don Prudhomme's crew takes down their big awning on the side of the 18-wheeler. This wind can also affect racing conditions. Steve has the details.
Dave, the temperature is a perfect 82 degrees. The humidity, very comfortable, about 50%. But the wind is blowing 30 miles an hour with gusts to 40, already creating havoc up in the pit area. Awnings being torn right off of the sides of the trucks. A lot of crews trying to get them down, including Don Prudhomme. Now, fortunately, the wind is straight up the racetrack, so you don't have a dangerous crosswind. Now, with a top fuel dragster, this means more load on that rear wing, which could lever the front end of the car up. If it comes up in this wind, hang on, brother or sister, you might go right over backwards. Some of the crews dialing a little of that out of the wing, lowering the attack of the wing. With a funny car, the extra downforce, hard on the fiberglass bodies, hard on the windshield, but that resistance begs a nitro motor to burn more fuel and makes up for some of the performance loss. With a pro stock car, well, they just slow down. Unless they get sideways and let the wind take over. All the drivers are going to feel more of a jolt than usual when the parachute comes out driving into this wind. We may see some problems there as well.
Steve, with the wind blowing directly in their face, here comes Connie Coletta and Rudy Topke, our next pair of race cars in Top Fuel Eliminator at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Coletta has had rather an interesting weekend thus far. He grenaded an engine, absolutely exploded it right at the starting line in qualifying. Topke has been running exceptionally well. The Dardanelle, Arkansas driver qualified number 8 with a 5:11 and beat Frank Cook round number 1. Coletta was even quicker in qualifying, a 5:04, and beat Laurie Johns in his first round race. As we look back again, during that run, Coletta again experienced some engine problems. Watch the far lane of the racetrack. This time, Coletta's problems were right at the finish line, and Steve was there.
Well, a first-round win over Laurie Johns may be of little consolation to Connie Coletta. You see the giant hole where the rods have come out of this engine? The second severely damaged motor component of the weekend. Do you have any idea what's causing it?
Yeah, we put a different supercharger on it. It has a different opening in the bottom, and shouldn't have done that.
The different opening, David, in the bottom of the supercharger is actually smaller, so that the air goes into the engine at far greater velocity. And if you don't make the proper changes to your fuel system, kaboom, just like Coletta. If you do make the proper changes, like Don Prudhomme, you run 5:17 in a funny car.
Both drivers approaching the starting line. At the top of the Christmas tree, you see the lights come on, and Rudy Topke has overstaged or deep staged. He is in the proper spot, but Coletta is out in front. And Coletta wins in a 5.28 second elapsed time, the performance falling off drastically at only 265 miles an hour. Topke made a valiant effort, his speed over 275, but his elapsed time was only a 5:34. The deep staging can have an effect on that, Steve.
Absolutely. It improves your reaction time and puts your front wheels a few inches closer to the finish line, but it affects the elapsed time because you don't have the run out from the beam. The car doesn't have any momentum when the clock starts. So Topke actually much closer than the elapsed times made it look.
And Coletta advances to the semifinals, while back in the pit area, Maynard Yangst and the crew for Bruce Larson's funny car get in ready for his second round race. He's got quite a challenge. He's racing Ed McCulloch. AC Delco Heartland Nationals in the heart of America at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas. This is Eddie Hill, the Wichita Falls, Texas driver, racing against Shirley Muldowney. Muldowney at the wheel of the Performance Automotive Wholesale Special is the #1 qualifier.
You know, David, it's funny how quickly your fate can change in this sport. Just a month ago at the U.S. Nationals, Shirley Muldowney embarrassed when she couldn't qualify. The crew was furious at themselves, apparently, because they have stood all over this motor. More supercharger boost, more nitro, more of everything, including Shirley's right foot. It is flying.
Eddie Hill knows what to do with the throttle pedal, too. He qualified with a 5:04, some of the best performance out of the car that is actually several years old. Starter Buster Couch over checking the repair job done on a fuel leak on the injector system on Eddie Hill's car. Hill is in the near lane, Shirley in the far lane. Her car is a true state-of-the-art 300-inch wheelbase, all the bells and whistles and the tricks that you could ask for. Hill's Super Shop's car is only 258 inches long in wheelbase, but it's run over 290 miles an hour.
Shirley Muldowney was away first. Shirley Muldowney waltzes to victory. Up a 5:08 and 278 miles an hour into this win. That's impressive.
Another impressive run by Eddie Hill, though his elapsed time was only a 5:25. He ran over 284 miles an hour, trying to run down Shirley Muldowney, but to no avail. Very consistent is Shirley today. Here now comes the next pair, and what a race this is. Darrell Gwynn, winner of the last two events on the NHRA Trail, the U.S. Nationals and the Keystone Nationals. His competition, Dick LaHaye, the man that is in third place in the Winston Points chase. The car literally jumping off the ground when he hammers the throttle on the burnout. The burnout, of course, done by all cars in competition. It is utilized to heat up those huge 17-inch wide tires, getting them up to the proper operating temperature to where they will provide the traction necessary. Let's go to Steve with Shirley Muldowney.
David, we're seeing a driver and a crew working in perfect harmony today. You gave the crew the leave they wanted. You were off the mark first, Shirley, and they gave you the power to run a 5:08.
I knew it was good. It ran free. You know, that headwind was kind of giving us a little problem out there, but Steve, I'll tell you, it just sashayed down through there just as nice as can be. I love it.
When a car is running this good, are you more relaxed on the starting line?
Absolutely. You know, your confidence is up, and you know that, you know, they build a good car, and they just, you know, they just make it so easy for me.
To my final bound.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Shirley finding it easy today, and she likes that much better than it's been over the last few months. Here is one of those state-of-the-art cars we talked about. This is Dick LaHaye, his daughter Kim backing him up. Steve, we talked earlier about Gary Ormsby's new car and the motor position, where the motor sits in the chassis. What does that mean?
Well, as Gary said, next year, NHRA is going to require lower differential gear ratios to try to cut down some of the tremendous speed. And we're running out of shutdown area in a lot of these racetracks. It probably will not affect the elapsed time greatly, and elapsed time is what wins drag races. Dick LaHaye can tell you that from Lansing, Michigan. Now, Dick LaHaye and the man he's racing here right now, Darrell Gwynn, will both have to go to a 320 gear. That means you have to have more weight over the rear tires for traction because of that lower ratio. Ormsby's car is already built for those rules, but they haven't been enacted yet, and that could be a little bit of a disadvantage.
In the far lane of the racetrack, the Coors Extra Gold car of Darrell Gwynn. Dick LaHaye staging carefully here in the near lane. A tremendous race as Dick LaHaye pulls ahead right at the finish line. LaHaye with an elapsed time of 5.08 seconds at 277 miles an hour. Darrell Gwynn ran 5:11 at 272. A close race off the starting line, a very slight advantage going to Darrell Gwynn. Then at mid-track, watch what happened. In the near lane, Dick LaHaye's car started to lift the front end. He was able to drive through it, bring the wheels back to the pavement, and at that point, he charged on past Darrell Gwynn to take the victory. In the semifinal round, it will be Dick LaHaye against Connie Coletta. LaHaye will have the choice of lanes by virtue of the quicker elapsed time. Shirley Muldowney races Joe Amato, and Muldowney's 5:08 earned her the lane choice. Steve?
When the season is over, we may look back at this second round here in Kansas as the one that made all the difference. Whoever ultimately wins the championship title. Dick LaHaye, a brilliant drive, a 5:08.
Thank you very much, Steve. We needed it.
Did you believe this round with all four of the Giants?
Well, we knew it was going to come down to it sooner or later, you know, as the season progressed on. And this could be the World Championship round right here. We're kind of excited about it. You know, we just got to take one round at a time, and there's 3 more races after this, and we'll just see what happens.
Boy, I'll tell you, it never gets dull in this deal, does it?
It never does.
And the pressure never ceases, whether it is on Dick LaHaye or on that man Larry Miner, the owner of the Miller High Life Racing Team, which also includes the Oldsmobile-bodied funny car of Ed McCulloch. The crew getting it ready for round number 2, where he'll face Bruce Larson. Back at Heartland Park, Topeka, I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and this is one magnificent racetrack. As you can see by the statistics, a lot of work has gone on since ground was broken back in 1988. One of the men responsible for making it happen, the mayor of Topeka. Steve?
David, on this warm, rather blustery Kansas afternoon, Topeka Mayor Butch Belker, he could be up in the air-conditioned suites, but he's right out here with us. And Mayor, it's not unusual for a community to get behind an NHRA national event in spirit. Topeka has done a lot more than that.
Absolutely. We've got $7.5 million of public money invested here. We had a vote of the public to make this happen, and now they've really come through for us.
And this began some years ago, really.
About 6 years ago, I started my remarks today. In the movie Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner starts out with this voice saying, "Build the field and we will come." We talked to NHRA 6 years ago, and they told us the same thing. We couldn't be happier the way it's worked out, and we really appreciate everybody in NHRA for sticking with us for these 6 years.
And we appreciate all the hospitality of the city of Topeka. It's been grand.
Well, thank you very much. We've got a lot of people that worked with us. The hotel-motel industry has been meeting with us on a weekly basis to critique everything, and we feel we've done everything we possibly could, and we want everybody to come back.
Enjoy the day. You deserve it.
Well, thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Thanks for all your help.
Steve, the $20 million plus investment into Heartland Park, Topeka has created a racetrack second to none, and there is an overflow crowd today jamming this facility to watch the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. On the starting line now, round number 2 of Pro Stock Racing. This is Kenny Delco in his Pontiac Grand Prix. He is racing the Chevrolet Beretta of Joe Lapone.
Lapone from Pennsylvania has had a tough weekend. Broke his engine in qualifying, has rented a motor from fellow racer Frank Iaconio. Kenny Delco has had a silky smooth weekend. In fact, he qualified 2 positions ahead of Joe Lapone in the number 8 position.
Delco in the Paul Rubetsky Construction Company Pontiac Grand Prix. He is the only racer in Pro Stock that is using this body style. Lapone in the easy wider Beretta. Good start for both drivers. And across the finish line, very close. Lapone winning the race. 7.46 seconds at 183 miles an hour, but he had to come from behind to do it. Watch in replay. Kenny Delco, who had deep stage, got an advantage over Joe Lapone off the starting line. Nearly 0.08 of a second. But as we told you earlier, there is a dark side to deep staging. Your elapsed time will not be as good. He ran a 7:54 as Lapone charged past at the finish to win the race. Steve?
You know, it may have only taken 7.46 seconds, but it seems like an eternity when you're trying to come from behind, as you were.
Well, you know, Kenny did a real good job. He confused me up there a little, the way he staged it. He deep staged, and I wasn't ready for that, and the car made a good run. We're real happy, and we needed this to stay in the top 10, which we're going to, and we're going to have a strong finish towards the end of the year.
Is it worth a honk of the horn?
Oh, yeah. I love it.
Let's hear one. Joe Lapone, the only Pro Stock car in all of drag racing with...
It's for all the safety
horn.
crew and all the people who make this all possible and safe for us, and Diamond Pete people do a good job. Thank you.
And we like Joe Lapone, too. Horn and all. He's into the semifinals of Pro Stock Eliminator. On the starting line in the near lanes, Frank Iaconio. He's the guy that rented the engine to Joe Lapone. In the far lane, the Levi Garrett Chevy Beretta. This is Bruce Allen, winner of 4 races thus far this season, and the only man with a chance to catch Bob Clinton for the Winston Championship. Frank Iaconio qualified in the number 8 spot. He beat Mark Powick in his first round race with the Super Shop Pontiac.
And look at this. Iaconio was rushed right up, put on both lights. That's a trait we have seen him display before, hoping to rattle Bruce Allen. I'll tell you, Dave, I think that man is rattle-proof.
I do, too. Just like Bruce Larson in funny car racing, the man must have ice water running through his veins. He does not get rattled. Off the starting line, a good lead for both drivers. Allen almost crosses the center line. He has to back out of it. And Frank Iaconio moves into the semifinals with a 7.50 second time. His speed over 182 miles an hour. In replay, you can see what happened to Bruce Allen. The cars left the starting line with identical reaction time. But as the Chevy Beretta moved down course, Allen had a problem that caused the car to veer towards the center line. He was able to drive it back into his lane, while Frank Iaconio was headed to the finish line for the victory. Steve?
Frankie, tell me about the race. You saw him break?
Yeah, we left pretty even. I might have left a skosh ahead, but Bruce was ahead of me right away, and then I seen him fall back, so I don't know what happened. I guess he broke.
Good fortune for you.
Yeah, that's racing, I guess, you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
The brakes of racing going today to Frank Iaconio's favor. More Pro Stock in just a moment. The AC Delco Heartland Nationals, the huge crowd watching as round number 2 of Pro Stock racing continues. In the far lane, it is the Castrol Oldsmobile of Larry Morgan. In the near lane, the Atco Chevy Beretta of Gordy Rivera from Yuma, Arizona. He qualified well in the number 7 spot, while Morgan qualified number 3. 3 Oldsmobiles, in fact, were at the top of the qualifying list.
Larry Morgan won the U.S. Nationals. He won the bonus event, the Mr. Gasket Hearst Shifter, $50,000. But he's in tough here because under the hood of that Chevrolet in the near lane is a Bill Grumpy Jenkins built engine that has that car flying. Gordy Rivera will have a shot here.
The engine's to about 8,500 RPM when they drop the clutch. A close race at the finish line, but Larry Morgan wins it. 7.46 seconds is elapsed time. His speed, 184 miles an hour. Rivera very close with a 7.50. At the starting line, the advantage, actually by 0.03 of a second, went to Rivera. So it was up to Morgan to play catch-up. By the time they neared the midway point down this quarter-mile racetrack, it was an even race. At the finish line, Larry Morgan had pulled ahead by just about a wheel length to take the win.
The U.S. Nationals champion goes another round into the semis here. Larry Morgan, great job. How about this racetrack for a Pro Stock car? Tell me about it.
Man, this is beautiful. I'll tell you, the cars are, my car got down the track pretty good. I think it's a good track. I think it's going to be beautiful next year. Give it a little time. It is beautiful here.
We saw Bruce Allen get crossed up and have to shut it off. Just his car, you think?
I think it's just a car. I went fairly straight, so I feel awful confident.
Confident he should.
Well, the wind continues to be a factor. You can see and hear it as it blows in here into Heartland Park. But the interesting note is it is headed directly down the racetrack. It is a true headwind facing each of these drivers. In the far lane, the number 1 qualifier, the AC Delco Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson. He has had quite a weekend. A 7:33 elapsed time in qualifying put him number 1. That earned him the right to race the number 9 car. Bob Glidden off pace just a little bit with a 7:41 for his qualifying spot. It was 2 weeks ago that Bob Glidden was on top of the world, receiving a plaque from Bob Maston of Winston, signifying his 75th national event title. That plaque, by the way, had 75 diamonds in it.
And here was that race in round number 1 earlier today. It was Glidden in the Ford Probe in the near lane, Warren Johnson in the far lane, and right now, right about here, Glidden and his son Billy knew they were in trouble. After Glidden suffered that rare first-round loss, we talked. Bob, we went from the peak of Maple Grove, Pennsylvania, in your 75th win to the valley of Topeka, Kansas, in a first-round lose.
That's the way it goes, Steve. That's racing. We just didn't get our act together. We qualified really poorly, 9th, and 9 runs won, and Johnson, he's really stepped up.
What makes the difference, though, the performance fall off?
That's a good question. If you can find the answer, that come by and I'll give you a little change to tell me.
Don't count on that.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
At least Bob Glidden can still laugh about it. Darrell Alderman is the competition for Warren Johnson here in round number 2. Alderman drives the Excite Edge Dodge, and this is the only Mopar that is competitive in Pro Stock. He's already won the Gator Nationals this year, and underneath the hood is a 500 cubic inch engine that is a wedge motor. This is not one of the famed Hemis that the Chrysler people have made so famous over the years. Johnson in the far lane, Alderman in the near lane. Just at the finish line. What an upset. Darrell Alderman, a 7:43 elapsed time. A losing 7:45 for Warren Johnson, falling off pace considerably.
This is some of the most incredible Pro Stock racing we have seen all year long. Glidden out round 1. Now the number 1 qualifier gets blown in the weeds by the only Dodge in the sport with a last-second surge. Just terrific action. You can see why the fans are on their feet for every round.
A tremendous race, and look how close it was at the finish line. Darrell Alderman by half a car length. That win sends him into the semifinals where he meets Larry Morgan, but this time Alderman has lane choice. The other pair, an Nhra General Motors battle between Joe Lapone Chevy and Iaconio's Pontiac, and Lapone has the choice of lanes. Steve?
Well, for a man who wins so often with hole shots, it's got to be nice to outpower the low qualifier. Your 743 bit his 745.
I'm tickled to death. Wayne County tuned on this thing. We've been working with the clutch, and they just done a fantastic job.
The car, it really has been in a little bit of a slump.
Yes, I'm the one that's been in the slump, Steve. The car's been doing great.
Well, you're back on your game, too.
I hope so.
Never without a smile, that's Darrell Alderman, one of our 4 semifinalists in Pro Stock. In Top Fuel, Kim LaHaye, she's the crew chief on her dad's Top Fuel dragster. They're comparing notes about the setup with their car in the race against Connie Coletta. In contrast this weekend at Heartland Park, Topeka, on the one hand, you have low qualifier Shirley Muldowney signing autographs. In another part of this spacious facility, an effort has been put forth to assemble some of the cars of the past to show the young fans just what's happened to drag racing in 35 years.
NHRA is still totally dedicated to safety, but that old logo from the first Nationals at Great Bend, Kansas back in 1955 has been changed many times, modernized, as it were, to keep pace with the rest of the sport. Now, you look at the starting line here at Heartland Park, Topeka, that incredible nerve center. Well, this was it. This was all they had in 1955 at Great Bend. You pulled in, you opened the flap, you signed up all the competitors. When the day was done, you gave them their trophies. There was 0 prize money, and that was about it. Now, there's a great exhibit here in the pit area today that a lot of fine folks are enjoying. And under this tent is one of the cars that actually competed back in 1955. That is Bill Stiles' 39 Chevy pickup. That was one of the first small block Chevrolets that made it from wrecking yard to hot rod. Now, this street roadster was the class winner, moving up a couple of years, in 1957. Carl Stone's famous machine, and that has the 57 Corvette motor with the Stromberg 2-barrel carburetors that were so popular in those days. Now, outside the tent are some real beauties. You're looking at the high-rise 427 Ford engine in Dino Don Nicholson's famous 1964 Mercury Comet. Now, this was Mercury's first attempt at factory drag racing, and it was Dino Don's first non-Chevrolet ride. Now, at the 64 U.S. Nationals, the car performed in the mid-10s at almost 140 miles per hour, but the Dino Man blew a clutch and didn't win the class. But later that year, he did win 79 out of 80 match races, a car that will be long remembered. Now, by the 1966 U.S. Nationals, there was such a thing as a funny car. Now, this was the Ford Motor Company's first attempt at serious factory drag racing. The Phil Bonner car, Daddy Warbucks. Holman and Moody out on the West Coast built 8 of these cars. Fiberglass bodies, not flip top. No superchargers, fuel injection, but lots of nitro, 90%. Car ran in the mid-8s at almost 180 miles per hour. Now, by the 1969 U.S. Nationals, my, how the funny car had evolved. This was Connie Coletta's Bounty Hunter. Flip-top body, tube chassis. Take a look at the roll cage. I don't think there's a funny car driver here today that would wheel this thing to speeds over 200 miles per hour. Just not enough protection. Now, the engine in this car, the Boss 429 Ford. Now, it is still the basic power plant being used right here this weekend in Bob Glidden's Ford Pro stock machine. Now, notice where it says Bounty Hunter. Well, after the 69 U.S. Nationals, that was changed to Bounty Huntress. This was Shirley Muldowney's first funny car.
In those days, a funny car was capable of about 200 miles an hour. Today's modern creation, 280 miles an hour plus, and a pair of them are coming to life. Kenny Bernstein, the reigning 4-time champion. The battle of the big red cars, his competition, the guy that holds the speed record at over 283, Mark Oswald.
Oswald also holds the elapsed time record at 5.21 seconds. And David, the rules, the technology has more than kept pace with the speed. These cars are, no question about it, safer than that old car of Connie and Shirley's.
Steve, you talked about the roll cage in Connie's old car. Compare it with the one that Mark Oswald is sitting in.
Well, Mark Oswald has far more protection because the roll cage is much tighter, and the driver literally is kind of wedged down in it. If you hit something, the guardrail or whatever, you're not flying around inside that car. You're in a cocoon of chromoly steel.
Mark Oswald, the #1 qualifier here with a fine 5:22, driving the Motorcraft Probe, is challenging once again Kenny Bernstein. The interesting note throughout all qualifying runs here, these two cars ran side by side, testing each other on each and every run. And based on qualifying times, Mark Oswald obviously came out the victor.
Mark Oswald has this entire field scared to death. He is running with awesome power and uncanny consistency. That's the young man to beat.
Kenny Bernstein ran a very respectable 5:36 in qualifying. But when you subtract the difference of Mark Oswald's 5:22, he's 14 hundredths of a second behind in performance. He is also behind in his quest for a 5th Winston Championship. Bruce Larson's got a big lead.
Mark Oswald would be happy at the end of the season to just hang on to that number 2 spot he enjoyed last year.
Oswald moves to the semifinals with a decisive victory over Kenny Bernstein. The time, 5.34 seconds. Bernstein was back a 10th at a 5:44. Oswald just dominating as Bernstein tried his best to play catch-up, but was unable to do so. Off the starting line, they were practically equal. But by the middle of the race course, the car in the far lane, Mark Oswald, had moved ahead and continued to extend his lead until they crossed the finish line, where he had more than a car length daylight over Kenny Bernstein. Now let's go to the far end of the track. Steve's with the winner.
Does Mark Oswald have the field's attention? Earlier today, when Kenny Bernstein found out he raced Oswald in the second round, he said, "It's going to be a short afternoon for me," and he was right.
Well, fortunately, he was right for us today. We always have good races. You know, one of us might be running one a little bit better than the other, but it's always a good race.
Car slowed down to a 5:34. The wind?
Well, the thing was a little bit soft the first round, and we wondered if we should get after it, but the front end's been in the air a little bit, so we've more or less left it alone. We kind of expected that.
Smart racing.
Thank you.
Mark Oswald moves into the semifinals as we get ready to continue with more funny car competition coming up here at the Hartman National. But before the engines fire, Steve Evans has got a very special guest from a very special vantage point.
David, we have got a bunch of thrilled spectators high up in the grandstands because they have found in their midst, enjoying the action, the founder of the National Hot Rod Association. It's chairman of the board, Wally Parks. And Wally, what a day. And how about the banners all over Topeka? Welcome home, NHRA.
I tell you, that gives us a great feeling. It took us 35 years to get back to Kansas, but we're here now, and you can see the results.
Indeed. It used to be you had to sell a city on having a race. This city sold you on coming.
Well, I think that was the case, and of course that was the case when we went to Great Bend. It was their Chamber of Commerce that divided us there, not knowing what we were starting at that time, but here we are again.
In one of the biggest racetracks I have ever seen.
Well, I think this one is probably a showplace like nothing that's come along for a long time. It is for us because they've got more quality built into the facility from the track, the surroundings, and everything else than any of us ever imagined, and we're here.
Well, Wally, I hear the next pair of funny cars lighting up. I tell you what, David, we're going to leave you out of this one. You want to call this race with me?
Why not? Why not?
Okay. Who we got? First to burn out is Bruce Larson in the near lane, the funny car points leader. He'll be racing Ed McCulloch in the far lane.
I think the burnout here is probably a premium part of the show for everybody that's looking.
And oh, the thunder of these automobiles. You can feel the grandstands vibrating.
Well, you can feel it in your feet if you're out near the line out there. The ground is shaking, and that, too, is part of the excitement of the whole thing.
On this very warm afternoon, both drivers had their emergency hatches open. No problem. That's their only form of air conditioning. All right, Wally, who do you like in this one, Larson or McCulloch?
I'm going to have to take McCulloch on this one. I seldom choose favorites, but I just got a little hunch.
Okay. You know, we're probably looking at 8,000 horsepower collectively, maybe as much as the entire field had at the First National.
I don't think we had that much up there. The strongest engine we had was an aircraft engine, and then one car with 2 engines in the thing, but these are way over most of what was there, for sure.
Do you remember the winning elapsed time and speed that year?
Winning elapsed time was 10.03 seconds.
What about the speed?
Speed was 151 miles an hour.
So they're running 140 miles an hour faster today. McCulloch in the far lane, pre-stage. Larson in the near lane. He is staged very deeply, but probably intentionally. Wally Parks, you called it, a 546 to a 550.
It was a simple little hunch. I didn't know anything that anybody else didn't know.
What do you think, David? Did he pass the test or what?
with flying colors, Steve Evans, and so did Ed McCulloch as he advances into the semifinal round. What a great race for McCulloch as he puts away the points leader Larson. Look at the advantage right at the starting line here in this replay. You see McCulloch just driving away down the quarter-mile race course. By the time they got to the finish line, Larson was nowhere to be seen. McCulloch just continued to pull away until the race was over. At the starting line now, the quickest funny car ever. A 5.17 second time set up at the Keystone Nationals just 2 weeks ago. Again, wrote history for Don Prudhomme. Inside the car with John Force on a smoky burnout, his Castrol Olds getting ready to do battle with Prudhomme.
Nobody burns the tires harder than John Force, and as well as these cars are sealed up, still a little of that tire smoke will creep into the cockpit. Yet another reason why often you'll see them in the backing up procedure open that roof hatch. Try to get some of that smoke out. Look at the crowd on hand for this one, Max. They love John Force. They adore the snake.
Steve, this is truly a standing room only crowd. After the final day of qualifying, the handwriting was on the wall. They knew they had to open up some areas, and they created some standing room areas. You saw just a portion of it there in front of that huge grandstand. There is another big stand right next to the four-story operations and hospitality complex. Tens of thousands of people enjoying a great day of racing here at Heartland Park, Topeka.
Don Prudhomme, who won the U.S. Nationals and the Big Bud Shootout, $100,000 payday over Labor Day weekend just a month ago, qualified in the number 3 spot at a 5:35. John Force in a good, solid number 8 position. He disposed of Art Hendy in round number 1 while the snake was taking care of Jim White. Look at these pictures, Mac, on board as the body comes down. After the body coming down for the second time, after the burnout, crew chief Austin Coyle always raises that Oldsmobile body and takes a ground wire off of the second magneto. He doesn't like to run both magnetos on the burnout. The snake, he runs everything he's got all the time.
The Skull Bandit, Don Prudhomme, in his Pontiac bodied car. John Force in the near lane. The lane choice going to Prudhomme. He had the quicker elapsed time in the first round when he defeated White. Patience is being exhibited by both drivers in the staging procedures, doing it oh so carefully. Prudhomme driving away from the guardrail, and John Force just nips him at the finish line. 5.52 seconds, his speed, 264 miles an hour. And that little waver out of the groove of the racetrack cost Don Prudhomme dearly. As we look again in replay, it was a 200th of a second advantage by John Force in the near lane, while in the far lane of the track, Prudhomme had his hands full. The car had drifted out of the groove towards the guardrail. He drove it back, continuing to apply the power. But the advantage that Force had at that moment was just enough to keep him ahead of Prudhomme. At the finish line, Force 5.52 seconds. Prudhomme quicker at 5.50. It was the driving job by John Force that made the difference. Ed McCulloch will have to tangle with John Force in the semifinals, where McCulloch has the lane choice, and by virtue of his position on the elimination ladder, Mark Oswald has a bye run. Steve?
I don't know how we got him, but it was close. Did he run good?
You got him with a hole shot, just like you did at the Maple Grove.
About time we're doing something right, huh?
The ever-enthusiastic John Force, very happy about his big win over his idol, Don Prudhomme, here in the second round of Funny Car. His crewman seems to be happy, too. Either that or he's practicing for the football team. Back in Joe Lapone's pit area, Joe's minus an engine. Part of his rental agreement with Frank Iaconio was, should they race, Iaconio repose the engine. Now, Lapone has borrowed one from Lee Dean. It is being installed for the semifinals of the Heartland Nationals. Has already taken place here at the inaugural AC Delco Heartland Nationals, but nothing has captured the attention of this huge crowd like this race in the semifinals of Top Fuel Eliminator. It is Shirley Muldowney against Joe Amato. This is actually a rematch of a race just 2 weeks ago when we saw the first ever side-by-side fours. Truly history in the making.
And David, I think that moment is worth reflecting back on. This is how it's set up. It was the second round, a beautiful Maple Grove. Joe Amato was in the near lane. Shirley Muldowney, who briefly had held the national record, as we talked about earlier, was over on the far side of the racetrack. There wasn't anybody sitting down for this one. Not with Amato, a Pennsylvania driver, and Shirley Muldowney looking to knock him off. Amato carried the front wheels a little bit and settled down. Who would win it? It would be Joe Amato by the narrowest of margins, but more importantly, the sport's first ever side-by-side fours. 496 to a 497. Amato with that huge speed of 290. Well, now it's back to today at Heartland Park, Topeka. What do you think, Mac?
Shirley is the only car that is run in the 4-second range. She did it on the very first run down this racetrack in the first day of qualifying. Everybody else has tried to match that time, but the closest have been the mid-5.0s. Even Shirley herself has been unable to duplicate that 496.
Now, Joe Amato in the near lane knows exactly what he has to do. Try to earn 200 more points by beating Shirley Muldowney. He put away the points leader, Ormsby. He's in the driver's seat now. Shirley and Amato. Amato smokes the tires. It's over.
And Shirley wins the big one to put her into the final round of the Heartland Nationals. 5:10. Very consistent. Shirley Muldowney at 274 miles an hour advances into the final round. Back on the starting line, our next pair. The engine's running. This is Connie Coletta. Alongside of him, Dick LaHaye. It is now LaHaye's turn to try to earn some points. He just watched Amato smoke the tires right off the starting line. One of the very few cars that has overpowered this new racetrack at Heartland Park, Topeka. LaHaye has a chance to move up on both Amato and the points leader, Gary Ormsby. This top fuel points chase has turned into a real war, with Ormsby just barely able to maintain a lead at this point. Let's go to Steve.
2 weeks ago at Maple Grove, when Joe Amato beat Shirley Muldowney, even though she ran a 4-second elapsed time, she was all smiles, happy to be part of the first ever side-by-side fours. But you still owed him one.
And I'm all smiles now.
A 5:10.
Oh, that hay was good enough, you know. I finally didn't get welded by my friend Amato.
You know, the car looks like it's moving around a little bit in the wind at the big end.
It is. It's really moving around. And, you know, this Swindle's car really handles like a baby carriage. It's very windy here.
You may get a bouquet from Gary Ormsby as you stop Joe Amato here, and Gary may still lead with the points lead.
A bouquet? Let's hope they're not black roses.
Joe, good job.
We had a good run going, Steve, but it smoked the tires when the front end came down.
You gained in the points.
Well, we'll keep going, trying to just do everything. 200 points a race, that'll be enough.
Joe Amato knows exactly what he has to do. Outlast Gary Ormsby in each of the 3 remaining races by only 1 round per race, and he will repeat as the Winston Top Fuel champ.
Providing that Dick LaHaye doesn't go around further than either one of them. LaHaye is really in a wonderful position to strike, as you said earlier, Dave, if he can beat Connie Coletta right now.
LaHaye, with the lane choice, has selected the far lane of the track. I really don't think there's much difference between the 2 lanes. We have seen consistently the quicker cars take the far lane, and like Amato before him, Coletta goes up in smoke at the starting line. The elapsed time for LaHaye, 5.15 seconds and 273 miles an hour. 2 close friends meeting in the final round of this inaugural AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Shirley Muldowney will race Dick LaHaye, and Shirley has the choice of lanes. In the funny car pit area, the crew on Mark Oswald's Ford Probe hard at work, getting that car ready for what is a big break for Oswald, a bye in the semifinals. That single will automatically advance him to the final round. Steve?
Even with all the prize money at stake here today in Topeka, guys like Dick LaHaye, Joe Amato, and Gary Ormsby, they're counting points more than they are dollars, leading up to a $150,000 season in bonus. You got 200 more, Richard.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Car slowed down that run. I felt it dropping off on the other end, but at least we're in the final and we got enough chance for another round here.
Well, it didn't drop off too badly. A 5:15, a very competitive number.
Well, that's the slowest run we've made all weekend, you know, by, what, 700s. So it's, you know, a little disappointing, but at least we're there and we're going to give her our best shot.
Well, it's a her, all right.
It certainly is.
She's got lane choice. A big deal or not?
Not really. I run the quickest run yesterday in qualifying over there in the right-hand lane. You know, we'll be very comfortable over there.
Okay, Dick LaHaye, final round bound again.
LaHaye trying to win his 2nd Top Fuel title. He won it back in 1987. Pro Stock Racing coming up next.
Excellence of their newspaper, National Dragster. Meet the man behind it, photo editor for 21 years, Les Lovett. Leslie, you have the luxury of shooting trackside, but what about the fans? How do they take better pictures from the stands?
Well, I think they're already using the right film. Most of them are shooting with color negative. 100 essays about what I'd consider the best. The lenses that I like are the 80 to 200 zooms like this one right here. Perfect for shooting in the stands. One tip I'd be careful of, though, don't put the camera on automatic. It should be on 500 at 8 for 100 speed. That way, if some extra light or something comes up out on the track, you won't be affected by it here by the automatic exposure.
What about all the little pocket-sized cameras? Just about everybody's got one.
Yeah, I got one of those too. Little camera here. This thing's perfect for shooting in the pits, but not so hot from the grandstands. It doesn't have enough lens on it, but it's ideal for shooting, pictures of people getting autographs and your children and the famous drivers and such.
And there, the automatic is a good feature.
Oh yeah, all you got to do is just kind of point and shoot. It focuses, does everything. I never have to make any decisions.
Good shooting, Leslie.
Thanks.
No, you too can enjoy this man's efforts by becoming a member of NHRA and receiving National Dragster every week and the many other benefits. And if you join right now, they'll even include a free copy of the multi-award-winning home video, Decade of Thrill. So call right now and become part of the world's largest motorsport sanctioning body.
I just wonder, is that picture of Steve going to make the pages of the National Dragster? Well, you better subscribe to find out. In the far lane of the track, Joe Lapone in his Chevrolet. In the near lane, it is Frank Iaconio and his Pontiac. Lapone got here by virtue of using an Iaconio engine, but that's long gone. That's Lee Dean's motor under the hood at this point.
Look how fast Joe Lapone is backing up. Iaconio, as we saw before, likes to move up and stage in a hurry. Look at Lapone, he may beat him into the beams. They're already on the starting line, both cars together. And I think it surprised Iaconio.
I do too. Look at Joe Lapone. He left the starting line. Iaconio did not. Got caught with his RPMs down, and Lapone into the finals. The crew's coming over to talk to starter Buster Couch. He says Lapone's the winner. If you're going to live by the sword, you better be prepared to watch it come swishing through the air, and that's just what happened to Frank Iaconio. He had come into the beams and stage, but so had Lapone right alongside of him. When all four lights are lit at the top of the tree, it's race time. It may be a straight line racetrack, but there's a lot of twists that can get you to the final round. Here's the second pair of our semifinals. In the near lane, it's Morgan's Oldsmobile challenging the quicker Dodge of Darrell Alderman. Let's go to the far end. Steve's with Joe.
You moved up and staged like a man in a great big hurry, Joe.
Well, I have to give Frank Iaconio a lot of credit. I used his engine the first 2 rounds of this race, and I ended up having lane choice against him. So what we did was we took his engine out and put Lee Dean's engine in. That's why we were thrashing so bad. Frank likes to go up there and put both lights on. I knew that I was down on performance. Not anything against Lee's motor, but Frankie's building an excellent motor right now, so I just had to do what I had to do. I put both lights on against him, put on a limiter, and off we went, and I guess he just wasn't ready.
Apparently not. Now, the last time you went into a final round, you had adopted a Vince Lombardi philosophy to pump yourself up. What about this one?
We're ready for it now. We're on Vince Lombardi time again. We're back. It took us a little while. We lost our way, but we're back again.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Lapone now headed to the final round of the Heartland Nationals on the starting line. One of these 2 cars will be his competitor. In the far lane is Alderman, near lane is Morgan. Staging carefully, Morgan the last to stage. And the first to leave, a red light. He left the starting line too soon. Automatic disqualification. And Darrell Alderman's Dodge for the second time this year in the final. 7.48 seconds. His speed 181. He will have the choice of lanes as he comes to the finals to face the Chevrolet of Joe Lapone. When we come back to Heartland Park, Topeka, it's time for funny car racing. Along with Steve Evans and Ed McCulloch and John Force, getting ready for their semi-final round of action in Funny Car Eliminator. Meantime, back in these huge pit areas, there's lots of work going on in Joe Lapone's pits. Steve?
I haven't seen musical motors in pro stocks like this maybe ever. What's going on, Joe Lapone?
We had the misfortune of breaking both my engines here. To run first round, I had talked to Frank Iaconio, and he was trying to sell one of his engines and having a hard time getting it basically in other people's cars, so we put it in my car and we're second fastest last qualifying round. So then starts the scenario, what do we do on race day? So Frank said I could rent the engine. We all went along. That was fine. I rented it. We came up with an agreed price. Made 2 runs. Well, now coming to the semifinal to have to run Frank Iaconio.
He wants it back.
Not a good thing to beat him with his own engine. So I didn't even ask. We took that out, and Gil Davis from Lee Dean's camp said we can run his engine. So after that round, when Bruce lost, Frankie won, stopped up at that trailer. At that point, Gil Davis, my crew, people from the Scribner crew, people from the Ekman and Orndorff crew, the Pennzoil people, David Belli was there, and it was a community effort to get that engine in time to run Frank. We were fortunate enough to get by Frank.
Now Frank's motor.
So now we decided, well, Frank's motor might be a little bit better, but I'm pretty sure it is better from what the last run showed. Nothing against Lee Dean. So now we're going to put that back in for the final. And we feel we have a real good chance of winning this race right now with this engine.
Good thing there's no more rounds.
Yeah, we're out of engines and people to borrow them from.
Steve, I've never heard a more diplomatic description of the necessary moves made by Joe Lapone Jr. Moving into the staging beams now, lighting the last 2 bulbs on the top of the tree, overstaging, in fact, is John Force. Alongside of him, Ed McCulloch, now set.
Force did not mean to deep stage there. That was an accident on his part. Look at this.
And a tremendous run by McCulloch puts him into the finals. 5.49 seconds his speed, 268 miles an hour. The losing time for Force, a quicker 5:47. As we look in replay, let's watch what happened.
I think when that car deep staged in the near lane, it bothered John Force's concentration. He was a little late off the mark, and McCulloch beat him with a slower lapse time. He did not deep stage on purpose.
By the time they had reached mid-track, McCulloch had his margin of victory, nearly a car length. He held it to the finish. Steve?
Ed, you knew you were in a drag race that time. Just 2 1/100ths difference, and actually you had the slower lapse time.
Well, I actually didn't see John until just before the lights, and then I could see his fender out there, you know. But, you know, it's just one of those drag races, you know.
Can a 5:49 win in the final, do you think?
I don't think so. Probably 49's not even going to get lane choice, but we're going to race him.
All right. Great racer, Ed McCulloch.
Mark Oswald does not have to contend with an opponent except the clock. He is on a single run. The rules call for each car in competition to make the same number of runs or rounds of elimination. Oswald knows what he has to do. He has been watching the race in front of him. He knows that Ed McCulloch has only run a 5:49. If he wants the lane choice, he's got to run quicker than that. Staging carefully. Oswald in the Candies and Hughes car out of South Louisiana on this single, moving him into the final. And he strikes the tires just a few 100 feet off the starting line. He did not want to do that. If Oswald was using this single run as a test to find the combination for the final round, that was not it. Mark Oswald with a very slow 9:31 gives away the lane choice to Ed McCulloch when they come back to meet in the final round of Funny Car at the inaugural AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Meantime, back in the top fuel pit area, that is the crew chief and husband of Shirley Muldowney, Ron Tobler, putting the finishing touches on that side of the race engine. They're getting it set for the finals against Dick LaHaye. Mark Topeka, the crew working on Dick LaHaye's dragster, getting it ready for the finals. They may not enjoy all the luxuries of a garage-type building, but these massive 18-wheelers can carry all the tools and parts necessary. Earlier, Steve had a chance to check in on the newest operation.
Boy, with a rig like this, it's got to be the latest megabuck funny car or top fuel dragster operation, right? No, not exactly. This is Jim Hale's rig from Van Buren, Arkansas, the most impressive sportsman lash-up we've seen since the 60s and the days of Sox and Martin. Now, a pair of Chrysler Corporation Superstockers. This is a Superstock D-modified, driven by Jim himself. This is a Plymouth Sundance. Also, the team car, driven by S.E. Buchanan, is a Dodge Daytona. Now, if you go down to the dealer and open the hood on a Plymouth Sundance, you're going to find a little bitty 4-cylinder motor mounted transversely, front-wheel drive. NHRA Superstock rules, as restrictive as they are, allow them to install V8 motors in these front-wheel drive cars so that not everything going down the racetrack looks like it's 15 years old. The rules, however, as far as the engine preparation are still very, very stiff, and the certification and inspection is very rigorous. Now, S.E. Buchanan, he survived in round one. Poor Jim Hill here, he was eliminated. To find out how S.E. did throughout the afternoon and to find out who won all of the Sportsman Eliminators, here again is Dave McClellan.
Steve Buchanan was eliminated by Bill Ringer in round number 3, and then Ringer was eventually eliminated by this man, Al Kuehl. He then faced Dwight Sutherland in his Corvette in the final round of Super Stock Eliminator. This is handicap racing. Kuehl got an actual head start off the starting line. If all worked well, they were to meet right at the finish line, and they did. With Kuehl taking the win by just a fraction of an inch, he's the champion in Super Stock Eliminator. The top alcohol dragster champ, Tom Conway, Pat Austin won his 8th race of the year in alcohol funny car. David Rampy, the competition eliminator champion, Al Corda in stock eliminator, Craig McCoy in super gas, the super comp champ Robert Turner, and John Mafaro clinched the Castrol Pro Stock Motorcycle Series Championship with his win at Heartland Park, Topeka.
It is time now for the Pro Stock final round. That man, Joe Lapone, and his Chevy Beretta. Wait a minute, you know what's happening here? Darrell Alderman in the Dodge had lane choice. He has changed his mind, and that is his prerogative. Right up until the time they start those engines, he can pick his lane. And David, while we were gone, a Sportsman car hit the wall in that right-hand or near lane, and apparently that spooked Alderman. He doesn't want it.
Steve, this is really a psychological move because there's nothing wrong with the lane, even though Jackie Stidham did just glance off the guardrail. There's no debris and certainly no oil on the track, but Alderman puts Lapone over there and possibly puts the thought in his head, maybe the lane's not quite as good as the one that I'm sitting in.
I tell you what, instead of a good crew chief, I think what you need if you run a Pro Stocker is an excellent psychiatrist on tour with you.
I assure you that anybody that runs against Joe Lapone needs one. Look what he did to the mind of Frank Iaconio in the semifinals. There's one man on this track that watches all the staging battles. That's the chief starter. Earlier, Steve talked with him.
David, I'm with Buster Couch right on the starting line just before the finals. And Buster, you know the idiosyncrasies of these drivers better than anybody else. How do you see the finals, let's say, between Joe Lapone and Alderman?
Well, Lapone's going to be trying to take advantage of every way he can if you know how he drives. Alderman likes to come on up and put his light on after he does his burnout, but he don't like to stage first. He likes to be the last one to stage. So you never know how Lapone's going to do if you've been noticing that. He allowed to come on and put both lights on first, or he allowed to sit there. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Oswald and McCullough in funny car.
Well, I'm not going to predict. It's going to be one heck of a race. They both do good.
And they're fair stagers usually.
They're fair stagers. They don't play games. They do their thing.
In Top Fuel, LaHaye usually likes to stage last. He'll press Shirley on that.
He does, but I don't think that bothers Shirley. I don't think it matters to her when she stages first or last. She just does her thing and concentrates and does the same thing over and over. It'll be a heck of a race.
And 3 good starts.
There you go. Hope so.
And 3 great races kicking off the finals here at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. It is Pro Stock Eliminator. Joe Lapone in the near lane. He's got a Chevrolet. These cars limited to 500 cubic inches, 2 4-barrel carburetors, running on racing gasoline.
The only thing that may be worn out on Joe Lapone's Beretta are the motor mounts. We've told that story, so again, at least he's got a motor here that he's familiar with. He ran it in the earlier rounds. Darrell Alderman, well, I think he's got a bit of an edge here, David.
Alderman and Lapone scratching their way to the finish line. It is Alderman winning his 2nd race of the year. The Dodge running a 7:45 and 184 miles an hour. The losing time, a 7:47 for Lapone, but it was all won right on the starting line. The race was over the minute the clutch dropped on the Dodge of Darrell Alderman. He had 0.04 of a second advantage over Lapone. By the time he got to the finish line, he had added 2 more hundredths of a second based upon the elapsed time difference between those 2 cars, and Darrell Alderman goes into the winner's circle, the champion of Pro Stock. At the end of the racetrack, it's congratulations time for Alderman.
Joe Lapone comes out of his laughing, as always, to congratulate, as we will, the Pro Stock champion. You earned this one. You outdrove everybody. You outran everybody.
Well, it's about time, Steve. I've been doing such a poor job all year. The cars really ran good all year, and I thank God Wayne County's put up with me. Dodge and Mopar Performance, Excite Edge, they're all great.
What was the deal on the lane choice?
Well, the alcohol funny went into the wall, so we thought maybe there could be something wrong with that lane, so we went to the other lane. And we ran a 43 in the lane in the 2nd round against Warren, and then come over this lane, and the car didn't go down the track very good.
Joe Lapone was not happy when you decided to change lanes. He liked where you had put him originally.
I'm glad he's not happy.
But you certainly are.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's 2 Pro Stock victories for that man in the Dodge car this season.
Whether he wins or loses, Darrell Alderman always has a smile on his face. It's only about 2 miles wider when he's a winner. Bob Glidden's a winner, though he hasn't clinched the Pro Stock title yet. Bruce Allen mathematically has a chance to catch him. In third, Larry Morgan. Alderman's moved into fourth, and Warren Johnson is now fifth. Leonard Hughes, the crew chief, on the funny car of Mark Oswald, waiting for the word to start for the finals at the Heartland Nationals. The funny car eliminator at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. In the far lane of the racetrack, we find Ed McCulloch in his Oldsmobile. That's his crew chief, Bernie Federle, out in front directing traffic. The crew gathered around Mark Oswald's Ford, getting it ready. McCulloch, remember, has the lane choice.
And McCulloch also remembers that not only did Mark Oswald smoke the tires here at Heartland Park, Topeka, in the earlier round when he had the bye, he did the same thing 2 weeks ago in Maple Grove when he set the record. He came up in a later round and overpowered the racetrack. That is McCulloch's hope that he'll do the same thing now.
McCulloch has been in the winner's circle twice this year. Gainesville, Florida, and the Gator Nationals, and then up in Brainerd, Minnesota, and the North Star Nationals. For Mark Oswald, this is his 5th final round appearance this season. He has yet to win a race on the NHRA Winston Championship Trail. McCulloch very late and smokes the tires. Oswald breaking him loose just a little bit in the middle, but it did not matter. Mark Oswald won the race with a 5:47 at 269 miles an hour, and just what McCulloch had hoped would happen to Oswald happened to him. He was very late at the starting line. As he came into the staging beams, McCulloch deep stage. That may have broken his concentration slightly. Watch here in replay.
And I'll tell you what, David, that big red car on the near lane, does it move? But it was on the ragged edge. Mark Oswald did a fine job nursing that car down the racetrack.
From a totally different point of view, you see Mark Oswald getting a huge advantage. 16/100ths of a second. Over a 1/10 of a second advantage going to Oswald, while McCulloch went up in smoke instantly.
Well, you don't win much more convincingly than this man, Mark Oswald. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. This car was really running good today. You know, the Motorcraft car was on all day long, and everybody on the crew performed flawlessly today. You know, and this is our 4th final this year, and we've lost everyone till now, so I'm really happy.
You know, you had no experience with that near lane. Concern at all?
Well, we did the other day, and it kind of did what it did on that last run. It got loose, but it was way down there, and I figured if I could get that far down the racetrack as hard as our car was running on the bottom with that much momentum, I could get through it. And when it kicked the tires loose a little bit down there, I just held it down.
I don't expect you to tell us what it is, but obviously this team has found something to wake this car up.
Yeah, we have. You know, we fell back a little in the points, and we decided to get after working on some new things, and they just fell into place real quick. And, you know, it's really nice for it to happen after having a disappointing first part of the year.
Hang on to that edge as long as you can. They usually don't last long.
No, they're hard to hold on to.
Mark Oswald will be holding on to the trophy. It is shaped like an Oscar, signifying his win here at Heartland Park, Topeka. Bruce Larson has got a major lead now over Kenny Bernstein. It's tough to imagine Larson losing the points chase. Prudhomme is third. Oswald has moved into fourth, and Ed McCulloch right behind him in fifth. On the starting line, Ron Tobler and crew waiting to start the engine. In Shirley Muldowney's top fuel car, she'll be racing Dick LaHaye in the finals of the AC Delco Heartland National. Against Shirley Muldowney. Muldowney had the lane choice. She again picked that far lane.
You know, David, I have been carefully watching Shirley's car this weekend and 2 weeks ago at Maple Grove. Now, we brutalize these drivers sometimes over the reaction times. You may step on the pedal at exactly the same time as the other driver, and because of the way your chassis is built and your clutch is set, the car just doesn't react as quickly. And I think Shirley Muldowney's car is not reacting as quickly as LaHaye's, Gary Ormsby's, and some of the others. She certainly has got the power and may be able to make up for that. One man's opinion.
Steve, both of these drivers were able to muster 5.0 elapsed times in both the first and second round, but it was in the semifinals that they both fell off. Shirley had a 5.10, while Dick LaHaye had a 5.15. That's what gave Shirley the choice of lanes and the opportunity to run the lane that she has liked throughout this entire event.
I think they only fell off, Dave, because of conditions. The wind was blowing a little harder then than it is now. The track was a little hotter, the rubber a little gooier. It's cooled off a few degrees. That may put them right back into the O's, maybe even the 4s, who knows?
Well, the burnouts are over and the crew's work is completed. It is up to the two people occupying the cockpits of these 290-mile-an-hour race cars, Shirley Muldowney and Dick LaHaye. They concentrate on the start and the Christmas tree, getting themselves set and a green light. A close race, and Dick LaHaye pulls it out by a matter of about a foot. At the finish line, Dick LaHaye had a 5.07 seconds at 278 miles an hour. An identical elapsed time, just 0.04 of a second quicker, was Shirley Muldowney. The starting line advantage gained by LaHaye. They shuttled back and forth. It appears at this point that Muldowney is ahead. Then, as they approach the finish line, LaHaye, there you see it, a half a car length, he is the champion. Crew chief and daughter, Kim LaHaye, obviously pleased. She's got a thumbs up for her dad. Steve?
Top Fuel finals just don't get a lot better than that. Two dynamic personalities and tremendous race cars. Identical elapsed times.
Identical? I must have left first and paid off.
Were you gunning for a light? Did you feel you needed it?
I had to, yeah, because, you know, we'd slowed down the round before, and we put a new blower on it for that run and put a new clutch in it and said, let's roll the dice. It should run an 06 or an 07, and lo and behold, it run an 07.
Did you see that pink car with the corner of your eye?
Seen out of the corner of the eye for quite a ways, and then out towards the top end of the racetrack, I started driving away from her, and I thought, boy, if it'll just hold in there, we're home free.
A magnificent win at a magnificent new racing facility.
Oh, very much so. This place is fantastic, and you really got to take your hat off to the people that built this facility. And, you know, this really tightens up this points race.
Oh, boy. You're still in third, but only 300 and some out of first.
That's true. And all we can do is just go into the next 3 races and see what happens.
Our hats are off to you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Dick LaHaye, the Top Fuel champion, and he is right when he says it really tightens up the points chase. Look at Ormsby's lead, 124 points over Joe Amato. Then just a few points back of that, Dick LaHaye in third. Darrell Gwynn still has a strong shot from his number 4 spot. Eddie Hill is currently 5th. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Heartland Park, Topeka. The 1989 NHRA AC Delco Heartland Nationals.
Station of Bud Sports, aired to
Speed World.